Sounds good.
Our next guest in the Rock House is none other than Dellacoma. Dellacoma has had such a diverse and interesting career, having been involved in theatre in the US, as well as appearing on many TV shows such as Cold Case, Neighbours, and Criminal Minds. Dellacoma is also an outstanding vocalist in his own right and has fronted bands such as Innertone, Sunset Riot, and his own band as well. In 2018, he joined the Australian INXS Show, which toured not only nationally, but internationally as well. Dellacoma, welcome to the Rock House. How are you, mate?
I'm doing quite well. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Where are you at the moment?
I am at my home in Black Mountain in Queensland. I've now lived in every state on the seaboard.
Mate, look, that doesn't surprise me because you've been around the world quite a bit. You're actually born in Seattle, is that right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. My mum's originally from Brisbane and my dad's from Dallas, and they met at university and ended up in Seattle when I was born. But we left there when I was I would have been 3, I think. 3.
Yeah. Okay. So your dad being from Dallas, I've got to throw in my beloved football team in there. Is he a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, mate?
You know, my dad is very ashamed at the fact that when I was 9 or maybe 10, I decided and that was right in the middle of like Dallas Cowboys heyday. You know, he got me like all the gear and everything. So I've got pictures of me as like a 9-year-old or an 8-year-old, you know, and all the get up and everything with the little pads on and everything. But I went over to the dark side and became a fan of New England Patriots. Would you believe?
Interview's done, mate. Interview's done.
Interview's done.
For you,
but let me say, I'm about as OG a fan as I can be. We're talking the early 90s.
Yeah.
So I remember, so my dad's a fan of the Hawthorn Hawks in the AFL and Dallas Cowboys in the NFL. And when I was 9 or 10, I decided that I was going to switch to New England Patriots and West Coast Eagles.
Oh, what's wrong? It's down. We can't do this. Sorry.
It's just done. The whole interview's done. And we've only gotten on to sports.
We haven't even got onto the music bit, right? So,
well, see, this is why, you know, usually in my experience, you know, if you're a big music fan or if you're a muso, you're just not into sports. Like it's quite rare for me actually to find other musos. Like in the INXS show, the guitarist is right into cricket, and him and I, when we're on tour, we'll sit there and watch cricket, and we're like literally the only ones. Everyone else is like, oh yeah, whatever, I'm going to go listen to some music or whatever. But him and I are both into cricket, and we're like, now he doesn't give a stuff about footy. There's only 3 sports really that I care about. And that's I like cricket, I like AFL, I like NFL. The other ones maybe sort of a little bit, but not really.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, just to go back to the Dallas Cowboys, of course, being a Cowboys fan, the 90s, mate. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since the 90s.
It has. Look, you're Dak Prescott. He's your quarterback, I think, at the moment.
Yep, certainly is.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. Your running back at the moment. His name escapes me, but he's really good as well. So I guess the defense just got to come up to scratch.
Ezekiel Elliott, that's right. Yeah, well done. We better talk about music and your stage career, mate. So we'll talk about the NFL another time. You moved down to Tasmania, my home state, when you said you were 3 at this point. What
I actually moved. We actually moved to rural Victoria for about a year and a half, Bairnsdale.
Yep.
In Gippsland, and then we moved down to Tasmania, and that was because my grandfather, so my mum's dad, he hated the heat. So, and he's from Innisfail, North Queensland. So he ended up in Tassie.
Yeah.
But then we ended up down there. I hate the cold, so I've tried to get away from the cold.
That's why I now live in Perth, mate. I had to escape. Right? Yeah.
Right.
So which part in Tassie did you live?
I was Burnie. I grew up in Burnie. I went to Halley College. Played soccer for Burnie United. Played for Wynyard in basketball. Yeah.
Okay.
Grew up. And would you believe? I mean, Tasmanians all around the world. I was in LAX, waiting for a flight, talking to this pommy bloke about soccer. And this bloke comes by and he goes, "Sorry, man, I couldn't help but overhear you talking about soccer." And he goes, "What years were you playing soccer?" And this is in under 18s. And I told him, and it turns out that this guy, we played against each other twice. He played for a team down in Hobart, and we played each other 2 years in a row, twice in the regular season, once in the finals, and then in the grand final of both years, like two back-to-back years. We played against each other like 4 times in the years. We were against each other like 8 times across 2 years, and here we are, like from Tassie, and here we are, like 10 or 15 years later in LAX, just
That's
partying.
crazy. That's crazy. I hate to ask another sports question. What position did you play, mate, in soccer?
I was left back.
Yeah.
I could run all day, but I could not shoot to save my life. So I was either left back or left wing, because I was pretty good at, like, I could pass with both feet, but I just could not shoot.
At some stage, you gave up the career in sport, though, mate, and moved back over to the States, specifically to Nebraska, where you studied at the York College.
Correct.
How was that experience, coming back from, country Tasmania, to move over to Nebraska to study?
Well, I actually went for a tennis scholarship, would you believe? I was a tennis junior as well, and before I set foot on the court, they actually lost funding for the tennis program. So, but I'd already come over on a scholarship. So what they offered me, they said, "Look, if there's another sport, most of the scholarships are gone. So what we can offer you is a half scholarship in another sport, if there's another sport you can qualify in, and a half scholarship in," and they offered an array of different things. And I ended up picking a half scholarship in the theater program, but I wasn't at the time interested in acting. So I was just doing like set building and lights and stuff like that. And then I qualified for distance running, and I ended up going to nationals that first year for the 10K. And then I blew out both of my shins and collapsed both my arches at nationals. So ran the worst race of my life in nationals, unfortunately. I was running sub 30-minute 10Ks. I forget if it's either 29:50 or 28:50, which was not fast enough to win it, but it was fast enough to qualify for nationals. So the rehab program for what I'd done to my lower legs was going to be like a year and a half. And this was the end of my first years, so it's like, well, there goes, by the time I'm rehabbed, it's almost into my 4th year of uni. So there's no point in kind of continuing there. So again, they were kind enough to roll that half of the scholarship over to theater. But one of the requirements, if you have a full scholarship theater, is that you try out for 1 production a year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I tried out for a children's theater part and ended up getting a main role and ended up absolutely loving it. Next thing you know, was in I think 12 or 13 productions across the next 3 years in university, and that's what ended up taking me out to LA.
Fantastic. Some of those productions included City of Angels and Elephant Man as well. What's your fondest memory from the stage?
That's a question I've not answered in a long time.
We're here to ask all of the hard questions at the right time.
Fondest memory from the stage, man. I've got to say, like that, City of Angels, even though I had a fairly small role, purely because that was the first time I got paid, as a full-time entertainer. I still remember getting that check, and it was a smaller theater company, so it was hardly anything. I think we had, one or two rehearsals a week and 4 shows a week. And I think it was only like $150 or $200 or something like that. Because like I said, I was part of it. It was a musical. So I think I had 5 lines, and then I was in the chorus and did several songs, but I didn't have any solo songs or anything like that. But I still remember getting that first check and going, man, I'm in, you know, it was in Burbank, you know, California, just north of Hollywood, you know, and being like, man, haven't quite made it, but man, I'm close.
$50 richer, mate. That was a big night out, I assume, after that.
Yeah.
Around this time, you also transitioned over to TV as well, and played a lot of parts. And like, there's some iconic TV shows that you were a part of as well. I mentioned a few, but there was the OC, Criminal Minds, Cold Case, Neighbours back in Australia. How was the transition from stage to TV? Because that's like almost a completely different type of acting, right?
It is. It's so different. Like, for anybody who's watching or listening, like I was brought up, my acting training was in the Stanislavski method. And I was quite meticulous the way I would create a character, you know. I would have my little routines, you know, a couple hours before I'd go on stage, a character sort of stuff. And when you go into film and TV, you got to kind of throw that out the window, or at least drastically change it, because sometimes, you know, if there's 10 scenes, let's say, and there's more than that in a lot of these things, but if there's 10 scenes, you scene 8 first, and then you go back and you shoot scene 1, and then you shoot scene 9, and then you shoot scene 4. Whereas in theater, everything happens,
It flows naturally, right?
It flows naturally, and you might have a flashback or something, right? But your character has a start point and an end point. Whereas in film and TV,
Bit here, bit there.
you've got to be like, okay, now we're going to shoot the scene where you've just found out about the murder, you know, and you're just in shock and everything. And then you go back after that and shoot a scene when you're buddy with the person who committed the murder, but you don't know that they're going to commit the murder yet, you know? So it kind of throws out your timeline internally. So I had to learn a whole new way of acting. And it really, I've since come back to acting, but it took me a little bit. When I first got out there, I really struggled to find my feet in that transition. And it took me getting into music and having that outlet of performing for me to then mentally go, no, I'm not done acting yet. I need to revisit this. And I went back and did I did a masterclass by Howard Fine, 2019. And that was kind of I'd done some acting, you know, again before that, but that really, it solidified a lot of things in me. And I did a feature film that's unfortunately still not out yet, but that's The Dealer. Yes. Yep. Yeah, it's very, very different. Chalk and cheese, man. It's like, you know, it really is, like, to use I guess a musical example, it'd be like the difference between, you know, doing solo acoustic work and being in a band. You know, it's this, you're playing music, but when you're totally relying on yourself, you know, as opposed to being in a band scenario where you've got a sound guy who can turn you on or off. You know, when you're solo acoustic sitting around a campfire, maybe, you know, you're playing music and you're singing, you know, but it's very different, very different.
Oh yeah, you can't blame the drummer, right? When you stuff up and you're doing stuff, right?
Yeah. And you know what? When you're solo acoustic, I mean, you don't really need to stay in time. You just need to stay in time with yourself.
It's being creative if you do that, right?
Yeah, right.
We do talk about The Dealer. Can we talk about your role in that feature film, The Dealer?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I play, I can't say too much, but I do play a character that will surprise anybody that me or knows me professionally. It's it's a bit of a social commentary, that film, and I play a character that's very, very dark, but hopefully it will cause the viewer to kind of look at society and ourselves at large, and take responsibility, I guess, really, because my character really personifies, what I describe it. He personifies that part of us that wants to blame others for the darker emotions or darker thoughts or the darker parts of society.
Okay.
There's there's one of the lines that I've got in there, that I can't remember the exact line because it's been a few years now, but it's somewhere along the lines of, everybody needs somebody to hate, so I'm just playing my part in society.
Okay.
And it's a pretty powerful film. It's a really powerful film. I can't wait. Unfortunately, I mean, it was meant to come out kind of just before the pandemic and all that sort of stuff, and then we lost one of the post-production people, and then that's kind of had a ripple effect, on through. So, but hopefully we should be getting something out here pretty soon.
So you play a surprising role that brings out the darker side of society. My money is on you being a rap artist in that movie. Anyway, let's talk about your move back to music, mate. So you returned to Australia in 2008 and then joined the rock band Innertone, who had an EP out. What was the driving or the motivator to move away from acting into more of a musical role and fronting a band,
Well, I actually, so I left LA. My agent at the time had said, if you haven't made it by the time you're 25, then you'll never make it, which now, being older than 25, I know to be completely false. But at the time, I wasn't strong enough, I just trusted that. And I hit 5 and I was like, well, I had my shot and I did some cool things, but still not feeding myself off it. So I moved back. I actually moved back in 2007, I believe it was. And I moved into, I just got a day job, and then it took me probably a year. And I was like, man, that itch. And I made a promise to myself then. I was like, I don't want to just keep starting and stopping and starting and stopping. I just want to follow this through until I'm done. Whatever that means, if I'm about ready to get on stage and I'm like, oh, I just can't be bothered, then I'm done, and I'll just do it for fun. But there's still that part of me that was like, nah, I can see myself just, doing this full time. And so I answered an ad in the paper for a rock band. And I remember going in and I was like, I can sing. And I remember going in and I went in, and the guy that was running, it was the band and everything. And I tried out with this song, and I kind of stopped about halfway through. And the guy goes, look, he goes, I'm just gonna be straight with you. He goes, you learn how to sing, and you can sing a little bit, but you need to learn how to sing better, and you just don't have what it takes to be a showman.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, oh man. And I remember going back out into the sort of open common area and just going, well, I had that whole gamut of emotions, and I walked back to the train station. I was like, it's like, man, maybe he was right. Maybe I am done. And then kept walking. And I started feeling this, churning in my guts going, you know what? Stuff him. I'm not done yet. And the catalyst. And so then I went out, and that was when I joined Innertone. So it's like, I kind of look back at that time actually, and I go, man, I wonder if you know, if I hadn't had those harsh words, whether, you know, I would have just kind of out, but I got that real fire in my belly, and I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not done yet. Nah. And
It's
I,
what
and
people though, right? When you're told you can't do something, it just makes you more determined to get out there and get it.
yeah. And the thing is, you know, if it doesn't, then it kind of then it is one of those things where it's like, well, maybe you don't really want it.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, we're talking about sports, you know, like elite athletes. I mean, they're all elite athletes in professional sports. There's not one person you look at and you go, you know, maybe, you know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you might have had, you know, a few people that are not quite in good shape in all the sports, but these days they're all elite athletes. It's not about whether they're fit enough. It's not about whether they're strong enough. It's not about whether they've got the talent, you know. Yeah. It's about whether they go out there and when they lose, they go, nah, stuff them. I'm not gonna lose like that again. And the teams that can get together and can do that, because every team in any sport, they have a loss throughout the year where the commentators will go, oh, they're done, or, you know, they're just not good enough, you know, or this player's just not good enough. Man, I think of, you know, Tom Brady, you know, going back to the, you know, I go, man, he is like, or I mean, another one, Roger Federer. I mean, he's not doing as well like now, but I mean, those guys are like, Brady's like 40, 44 or something.
Yeah.
And you know, he's like professional at this for what, 22 years or something like that. That is insane. And it comes back to this. And for me, like coming back to that moment, I went and joined Innertone, and we worked with Anton Haggett, who worked on Vulture Street by Powderfinger. And we did, I was living in Sydney, and we did a few shows, but we started writing an EP. But I wanted more of a writing role. And in that band, the two guitarists wrote everything, lyrics, melodies. And it just kind of got to that point where I realized, and I think you have these moments throughout your career where you realize why you do what you do. And the creation part of it is a big part of it for me. Like even fast forwarding to like when I joined the INXS show, I'd done a couple of fill-ins, and the guys asked me to join. And I said, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Like, I want to do it. I said, I've been asked my whole life to do INXS tributes, and I've always said no, because I've always done my own music, but I'd rather do this than do a day job. But if we're going to do it, we need to do it big time. And on top of that, I need you guys to understand that I still need a little bit of time, not a lot of time, but a little bit of time to do my own music, because I still, that the performing, I guess I see in a way that the INXS show is almost like musical theater in a way. It's not, but it because it's a tribute, you know, you're playing a role.
You are playing a role. So there is a lot of similarities.
But there's still that part of me that needs that outlet of, I'm going to write a song about whatever I want to and wear whatever I want to on stage. Whereas when you're doing a tribute show, and don't get me wrong, I love doing that. We've had a great reception with that, and some of the other shows that I do. But there is kind of a certain uniform almost that you have to wear. You know, you don't really get that. I can't just go out there in a fur coat. You know, if I want to, or like Elton John sunglasses, or I couldn't, not that I'm going to, you know, I couldn't shave my head, you know, or do anything like that, you know. There's not that sort of, and that's when I knew I wasn't a real rebel, because when I got told I couldn't cut my hair, I was like, no, that's fine. I don't want to anyway.
You actually do perform the role quite well. Whilst I haven't seen the tribute show live, certainly as part of preparing for this interview, there's just some amazing clips on YouTube, and you know, you have to rub your eyes a couple of times to go, is that Michael? No, it's not. It's Dellacoma playing the role. You can tell your acting background just portrays so well into this tribute act. So it's a credit to you, mate.
Thank you.
Just going back, obviously, there's a lot of passions. You're one of those guys that is just good at everything. You've had, yeah, I know, one of those guys that are good at everything. We all used to hate them at school, right? But you obviously have, you know, a really strong passion for sport. You have a really strong passion for acting. Did you have that same passion for music when you were growing up?
I think music for me has always been something that I can't remember a time without music, because I grew up in an a cappella church. So, and it was quite small, so you could hear everyone's voices. And my, going back even further, I mean, my dad wooed my mum back in the days of 8 tracks. He wrote a song for a cappella and recorded it.
Nice.
You know, 3-part harmony and all that sort of stuff. I actually blame my dad for my lack of good harmonies, because what he used to do in church is when I was a kid, he'd start the song, wanted to sing a harmony. So he'd start the song and then he'd get me to take over lead, sing a harmony. I jokingly tell my dad, I'm like, you're the reason I can't sing harmonies now, because I'm just singing lead.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. But no, I think, yeah, I dabbled in piano, which I wish, you know, I wish I'd stuck to. I've got a piano sitting here actually that I got through lockdowns and all that, because I was like, nah, I need to just start again. I'm one of those people that, like, if I was better at something years ago and I pick it back up again, I'm not as good now. I'm like, oh man, and get so frustrated. You know, I used to like doing a lot of art and I'm just not as good as what I used to be. But I'm finally getting to a point in my life where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get any better than I am now unless I just do it. So I got a piano so that I can just start doing some chords again. I played guitar, you know, I'm not a great guitarist, but I've played for years. And it's, yeah, you know, to answer your question, it's just been something that's always been there, I guess. I've just always, I can't remember, you know, as a kid being like, oh, this is what I want to do for a living. But I also can't remember a time when it was not hanging around. Like even in uni, I started a couple bands when I first, it was never something that I thought I would pursue full time, but I had a band in high school. I had a band, two different bands in university. When I moved to LA, first thing I did was I started a band.
Yeah.
You know, it was always something that was kind of there. And so I think when I quit, you know, the entertainment industry, I think having that solid break, it just felt natural that the first thing that I would do is go to music, because music is the thing that I had always done. Everything else had kind of, I hadn't always done sports. I hadn't always done acting, but music has always been there.
Did you gravitate to a particular style of music at all, or did you, you know, just listen to anything that come out?
Well, so I grew up listening to, I was homeschooled. So I didn't really have any influences outside of the home when I was young. So I was listening to, my dad was into James Taylor and Chicago and Carole King, and Johnny Farnham, America, the Eagles, that sort of stuff. But then I remember I would have been 14 or 15, and my mum's older brother made me a cassette tape. I'm dating myself now. Gave me a cassette tape, and she got really mad at him because it had a few rock and roll songs on there that she hadn't let me listen to yet. But there was, I'm trying to think what was on there. I feel like there was Black Sabbath, Iron Man,
Oh
I
no.
feel like there was Creep by Radiohead.
Yeah.
I think there was a Beatles song on there. I can't remember what else there was on there, but I remember as like 14 or 15-year-old, playing. I was like, oh, this is so cool. And then from there, I was kind of hooked. I got into like year 11, and I joined a band and we tried real hard. No, but I was in practical music, and we had this teacher. And he said, so the first, it was on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which was our long blocks. So I think we had like a 2-hour class, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday was like an hour, something like that. And so the teacher was like, all right, the first Tuesday every month, you're going to be in class, and
Yeah.
every other class time, you're going to go into the music room, because it's called
Nice.
practical music, and you're just going to play. And my chosen instrument in practical music was the voice. So he said, all right, well, you just need to pick a song. You need to go in and rehearse it. It was so boring going into a music room, as a 16-year-old on your own, just sing along. I think it was Hard Day's Night by the Beatles was the song that I chose. And right next to me was the big room. It was always so loud. There was 3 people in there. There was a drummer, a bass player, and a guitarist. So one day I got bored, and I walked out of my room and I walked in. And I said, oh, hey, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we're just jamming on whatever it was they're jamming on. So I ended up joining them. And then everyone was happy. And so we played Black Sabbath and Rolling Stones and Fuel and Counting Crows. Those bands were
At the time, weren't
at
they?
the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I sang a few songs for, there was an all-female band at my school called Spineless Puppy, and they were massive Nirvana fans, and so they would play their own music, but then they would do some Nirvana covers, and they would always get me to sing because they were purists, and they were like, no, we can't sing a Nirvana song because we're females.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, the whole reason for my question is you moved on from Innertone, but then your career starts to go into that more rock melodic type style with Sunset Riot, massive LA sound in there. The 2 releases, your self-titled EP, the Uprising EP, and then you moved away from that into your own solo career. Sunset Riot, big at the time, but what made you move on to do your own solo stuff?
That was kind of forced upon me, really. Our lead guitarist, so I was the last one to join that band.
Yeah.
And the lead guitarist who had the band, he wanted to do solo country folk sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I've never been a big fan of country, and he kind of was bringing in a few songs that just didn't vibe with me anyway before he wanted to split off. And then he eventually was like, no, he goes, I want to I just want to be a solo artist. And that was a hard pill to swallow at the time. And we kind of toyed with the idea of getting somebody else. But then when he left, the bass player had always wanted to become a pilot. And so he thought, well, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So then it was myself, the other guitarist, and the drummer. And then we felt like it wasn't really the same band anymore. So we're like, oh, we'd have to change names. And then it just kind of got too hard. And it was like, oh, if we're going to change names, we might as well just do something else.
Yeah.
And I was really bummed because I think all of us were bummed, but we just done 3 US tours in 3 consecutive years. And the last 2 years of that, so this was 2012 and 2013, we played a big festival called Rocklahoma. And we've been invited back again for 2014 Rocklahoma.
Yeah, massive.
And I was like, man, we've just gotten all this like traction and everything. So I kind of sat on the couch for a little while, and I thought about what I wanted to do. And I thought, no, I want to keep going with this. I just had, so my daughter had just been, she was 1, I think.
Okay.
But I was like, no, I still want to do this. So I wasn't quite sure if I was going to join a band or what I was going to do. So I messaged the promoter from Rocklahoma, the booking agent that we were going through there. And I said, I'm sure you've heard, Sunset Riot's broken up. He goes, yeah, I'm really bummed. I was looking for you guys back. And I said, look, would you have, he goes, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm in the midst of putting together a new project. Well, I wasn't really yet, but, and he said, he goes, oh, well, would you like to, haven't filled the slot yet. Do you guys want to come over and play? And I said, yeah, cool. And he goes, oh, what are you guys called? And I was like,
He's caught you out.
Dellacoma.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that makes sense. He goes, people know you here as, the singer of Sunset Riot, so it makes sense to do a solo band. And I was like, yeah, it does. So so I put together a band here in Australia, and we recorded an EP, but then a couple of guys didn't have passports and couldn't travel and everything. So I held some auditions, and then I ended up just putting up the family and heading over there. And I'd kind of set, so that was January of 2018, and the festival was in May. And I just did auditions, and I was like, I've got to have my lineup sorted by the very latest, early April. So I've got like a month or so to rehearse.
Yeah. Did you play
and some of those?
Or you walked onto the stage at Rocklahoma, or was Rocklahoma your first gig as a band?
Yeah, it was our fourth or fifth.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say first gig.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, and there's actually footage of that gig floating around online, because I picked up a clothing sponsorship with kind of the competitor to Warnstar.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they're around, but they were called Rock and Roll Gangstar.
Okay.
And so they filmed a couple of songs, and my set was basically, so it was that first EP that I'd released, and then the rest of the set was, I had a couple covers and then like 5 Sunset Riot songs in there.
Yeah.
And that's what most of that first tour that I did was like that. And then what we would do, like, it was old school, man. Like I bought a van that had 4 captain's chairs in there, and then it had a bed in the back, but I ripped out the bed, and that's where we put the gear, and we roll around, playing and writing, have a couple of days off. So I'd hire a rehearsal studio, and we go in, rehearse a new song. You go, oh, you want to throw it in the set tonight? Yeah, cool. Pull the song out. Oh, this is just not working. Oh, I've got a mate who's got a warehouse. All right, I'm gonna go camp there for a little while. Yeah.
All right.
And then we went into the studio at some point and recorded, and then came out of the studio, and actually I got sorry.
For everything was this what you
were
on? Yeah. I'm interested.
Yeah.
South of is that an old an ode to Tasmania?
Well, it is. So I got the idea. So the concept of Dellacoma musically, right? There's a lot of bands going around that, and my style would be considered this, the new wave of classic rock or throwback rock, or right. And that's cool and everything. But I was like, in thinking about like what the concept is musically, I was like, I know that I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, but the visual, I guess, that came to me is, you got an old house, and you buy it, and you walk in, and you're like, and initially you're thinking you're going to knock down and rebuild, and then you're like, oh, actually, no, maybe I just need to restore it. But I'm not going to do it the way that it was done. I'm going to keep a lot of this stuff, but the wallpaper needs to go. It needs painting, but really like that wall over there. That wall's going to stay the way it was. And that's kind of the visual that I had. And as we were talking about this visual and all this, and we're talking about all sorts of different names and everything, Tasmania actually came up.
Yeah.
And I started talking about that juxtaposition of the fact that I grew up in Burnie, which is on the north coast. So everything was northwest, right? You're you're at the top, but actually you're south of pretty much everything in the world.
Yeah.
Right. So that was where the name initially came. At some point I said I was south of everything. And one of the guys in the band was like, that's actually a really good title. I was like, yeah, kind of is. Now I think about it.
Yeah, look, that's how I felt as well when growing up in Tassie. We are south of everything, right? So,
well, that southernmost point of Tassie, the only inhabited place further south than that in the world is Chile.
Yeah, exactly.
Wild. Where in Tassie are you from?
Mate, I was a Launceston boy originally, but also worked in Hobart in the latter stages of my life down there. Yeah, so I was one of those northern Tassie boys as opposed to you northwest boys. But beautiful part of the world for those that are watching. Please, Burnie and Launceston, you will not get any more magical places in the world other than Perth and Brisbane. So following the south of everything, we spoke about you joining the Australian INXS Show. 2019 hits. Your music probably took a darker tone with the release of Vampires single, Till We All Belong, and then another classic single, which will go down in the annals of time as being one of classic rock's true Christmas themes, A Very Della Christmas. 2019 was ranks right up there with the Twisted Sister Christmas album, let me tell you. It's a serious interview, this one, mate.
I yeah, when I first contacted my producer and he and guitarist on that, and he's now the same guitarist and producer on the new record, I said, oh, because I was living in St Kilda at the time, and he was living in St Kilda, and I used to just call him up and be like, oh, what are you doing? What do you got on right now? And he'd go, oh, I've got this or I've got that. Or sometimes he knew if he said I'd got nothing on, I'd be like, oh, I want to come around. Can I, just come around and do some writing or recording? And be like, yeah, cool. Just came around one day and I was like, oh, I said, since I was in Sunset Riot, I've got this one fan. There's this woman from Scotland who lives in Sydney, and her name's Karen. And she'll come to shows. And she'll be like, oh, you know what, it'd be really cool. You gotta do a Christmas song. And I go, oh yeah. Anyway, fast forward to Christmas time, and she'll email me and she'll go, oh, did you do a Christmas song? And I'm like, no. She goes, well, you gotta hurry up. And I'm like, it's too late now. Anyway, so I had this other person that started asking me about it. And I was like, man, you guys wanting Christmas songs. I'm like, I don't really, I didn't really feel inspired to write a Christmas song. So I thought I'd do it a little tongue in cheek, right? So I went there and I said to Voyer, and he's a pretty expressionless dude. He makes amazing music, but he's pretty nonplussed. And I said, oh, I want to do a Christmas song. And he goes, oh yeah? I was like, I can't tell if you like the idea or not, because that's kind of how you are all the time. And he goes, no, I don't like the idea. I was like, just hear me out, man. It'll be a bit of fun. Anyway, we get to the end of the recording session. He's doing all these like extra vocals, and we're doing all this. I was like, you're kind of liking it, aren't you? And he goes, well, I'm not hating it. And it got to the end, and the bass player who I had at the time, who incidentally, he now plays, his name Tommy Sons, and he now plays for Dead City Ruins. And they just opened for Kiss in Melbourne.
Yep.
But Tommy's top by, he goes, you're not releasing this, are you? And I was like, absolutely I am. I don't know if it'll stay up there for forever, but
it's definitely on my playlist come Christmas Day, mate. Let me tell you, it's the opening track, A Very Della Christmas. So, Karen, if you're watching, Della owes this hit right to you. So, thank you, Karen. Mate, we all know what happened in 2019 or the tail end of 2019, leading into 2020, 2021. COVID hit. How, as an artist, how did you raise the impact that COVID brought to us all? Particularly living in Melbourne, like you had almost 2 years of constant, home isolation.
Well, that's why I left, man. My ex-wife and I didn't agree on a lot of things going into 2020, and kind of got to the end of 2020, and she called me up and said, "Hey, what do you reckon about getting the kids out?" And I said, "Absolutely."
Yeah. Yeah.
And from that, from a personal angle, I wouldn't have met my partner now without going through those lockdowns, because we met at a park and ended up realizing that we lived around the corner from each other. And I wouldn't have a good relationship with, like, working relationship with my ex-wife, the mother of my kids, without working together to get up here to Queensland. So both of those are positives that came out of it. But man, I was actually in New York when everything hit. So my mum was turning, I'd taken, so 2018, that was when I got divorced. I tore my Achilles. I had my worst financial tour with Dellacoma. I just, everything went wrong, could go wrong. And the band I had split up. So, they say everything happens in three. So 2018 was pretty rough like on a personal, professional, like everything. So 2019, I focused on getting my private life kind of in order, getting back on my feet, getting my health back. And I just decided not to do any sort of original stuff. I just focused on the INXS Show.
Yep.
And then 2020, my plan was to release a new record, but it kind of got a little bit delayed. And my mum was turning 60 in 2020, and she was living in the US, and so I was trying to work out how to get over there, but I couldn't really afford to go over. So I thought, oh, well, if I do, I'll do sort of a hybrid band, like a half originals. Dellacoma's Cosmic Experience. That's the idea of that. Is I pretty much just play whatever I want to. I could play. It'll have originals in there, but I play some INXS, play some 38 special. You know what I mean? Like I played Hoobastank. I played Ladies Night in Buffalo by David Lee Roth. Just play whatever I want to. Not a standard covers band. It's literally, what's Dellacoma's Cosmic Experience? Well, it's whatever the Dellacoma wants to play. To blow your mind, right? And so I thought, well, I'll do that, and I'll just do a little tour, and that'll pay me enough to where I can then take a couple of weeks off and go and see my mum for her birthday. Well, third show in, I was on stage in New York in March of 2020, and got off stage, and the owner of the bar was like, "You could be the last one to play New York for a while." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well, you were in your second song or third song or something like this, super early in the set, and the governor of New York got on and said, effective immediately, the whole state is shutting down." He goes, "But I just let you play till you were done," which was an hour and a half later or 2 hours later. And then I thought, well, LA and New York, they're the big cities. The way America works, the big cities operate totally differently to the rest of the country. And I'd had the first weekend was out there, and then I was going over to Kansas and then Wisconsin. And they're sort of in the middle of the country. And I was like, it'll be fine. So the Monday we had off, then the Tuesday was St. Patrick's Day, and we had a big show. Monday was just going to be a travel day. So went to bed on Sunday night. It's like, yeah, the state shut down, whatever. We'll wake up on Monday, woke up late, and then we were going to drive overnight. And then it got to sort of early afternoon, and the whole country just shut down. Next thing I know, fortunately, I had a friend who worked for Virgin Airlines, and she said, "Your flight does not exist on the inside, even though they haven't told you it's canceled yet. It's definitely not existing." So she put me on friends and family and said, "You just got to get yourself to LA, and then we'll put you on standby." So we just hauled ass over to Boston. I hopped straight on, bought a flight, hopped straight on. flew over and spent the next 2 days in LA, got on a flight, and this was before hotel quarantine and everything like that. And then flew back. It was so surreal. Flying in. So you had to, like, when you get in, and they had everyone in those hazmat suits and all that sort of stuff. And I was like,
Wow.
what is going on?
So back in Australia, you flew back into Australia.
Flew back into Australia, and you get in, they have all the hazmat suits, and they make you sign this just before hotel quarantine. You go through customs, and you have to put down your address, and you had to sign a thing that said, I swear that I will go to this residence and not leave for 2 weeks. And but then the funny thing is, then you hop on a bus, full of people, this is before all the masks and everything like that. So then you go back, and where the bus stop dropped me off, I had to walk a little bit to get to my place. I just remember I'm just walking and thinking, 3 days ago, I was like in Boston, and like 24 hours ago, I was sleeping on the floor in LAX, which I did for 2 days. And it was I could have been in LA so many times, and it was bizarre. It was so quiet because of so many, like overnight, it was shut, which it never is. And I was one of many people that were just sleeping there because they were all on, standby and all this sort of stuff. It was like some sort of post-apocalyptic movie, And then I was all of a sudden I'm back in Melbourne, walking up to this apartment. And I remember I took a video at the time going, as soon as I walk through that door, I'm not allowed to come back out again. This is real. I've never been in that scenario in my life.
I know.
It was bizarre. And I went in, and I went a bit crazy in those 2 weeks, but I wrote 2 songs, and one of them is the song that closes the physical album. We added a cover for the digital one, but a song called Stay.
Yeah.
This new album, it's wild for me to think about, like, how it's come together, because there's a song on there called Leave a Light On that I wrote all the way back in 2005. I brought it to the table in Innertone. They didn't really vibe on it. Brought it to the table in Sunset Riot. They didn't really vibe on it. Brought it to the table for South of Everything, and the guys who were in the band for that, they didn't really vibe on it. And then it finally made it on a record now. But I wrote it in 2005 all the way through to a song that I wrote in isolation in 2020, and everything in between. So people have said, Blood, it seems like a bit of a metal. Is it a metal album? I'm like, no, I get what you mean by that. But Blood, it felt like the only name that fit, because by the time I put it out, I was a truly solo artist. I don't have currently a touring lineup. The lineup that recorded that record, they've never even met each other. Drummers in Melbourne. I'm now in Queensland. Bass player is currently on tour with the Life Project, which is touring with Bush and Breaking Benjamin and Alice in Chains. And guitarist is in Sydney. I had Tracy Guns on one of the tracks, who's in Denmark. But everything in that record, you think of Blood, and from a music standpoint, we think, oh yeah, like Slayer and all that sort of stuff. But I was coming at it more from the angle of, blood, sweat, and tears. We think of blood, sweat, and tears. You think of, if you spill your blood, that's a cause for concern. You've got the blood that's running through your veins is what keeps you alive. You talk about being blood brothers if you're close to somebody. It's a multifaceted word, but the one thing that it has in common with all of that is it's very important. It's intense, and it's something that you can't live without. And these stories that I was telling, through the songs of Blood, that's my life. Like through 2005, I wrote that about my first divorce. Back when I was a kid, really, I was my early 20s. all the way through. There's songs on there that are about my second divorce, to the feelings I had, not necessarily about isolation itself, but feelings that came up during isolation in stay. There's Defiance and Kill Your Idols. I wrote those songs with the guy.
Those two songs are in my notes. Like, hold them there. Defiance and Kill Your Idols are down there. I was going to ask, Defiance, was that the inspiration behind that? To me, it sounds like, we're in this lockdown, but you know what? We've got to get out of it, and we've got to defy everything that's gone on in the last 2 years.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, right? Because again, I don't believe in coincidence in life, and I think that there's in my own life there's probably some sort of cosmic reason for not releasing the record when I wanted to, because I wanted to release it in 2016. Yeah. So yeah, we started recording it in 2016. So those songs, Kill Your Idols and Defiance, were written in 2015, straight out of the studio for South of Everything.
Okay, there goes my sonic interpretation then.
Well, when I looked at the track listing, right, and I'm looking at all these songs, and I had them, down, and even a song, Red Pill Pocket Watch. You really look at the lyrics of that, and I was like, man, some of these songs feel like how I'm feeling now. Like Defiance and Kill Your Idols and Red Pill Pocket Watch. I'm like, even I Don't Want It, to a degree, like that was, I won't go into what's behind that, because that was a very personal song, but that had nothing to do with lockdowns or anything like that. But even that song, you could make a case for it being about what you're feeling during those times. And I was like, man, I'm so glad that all the roadblocks that happened, because if it wasn't for, I was about to have the record done I started recording in 2016, and then the lineup that did South of Everything split in 2017. So we started writing it again with the next lineup, and that's what Vampires Until We All Belong. Those were recorded at the first session, and then that lineup split in the 2018.
Wow.
When I was going through divorce and torn Achilles and all that sort of stuff, and those songs I felt like were too good to just throw in the bin. But at the same time, I was like, I didn't feel like they fit with the full album. That was starting to take shape. Like initially, like Vampires Until We All Belong, that was the beginnings of Blood, and it was going to be on a record with Kill Your Idols and Defiance. And then I ended up deciding to just re-record Kill Your Idols and Defiance, because I felt like they fit better with the current crop, and leave Vampires and Till We All Belong as standalones, and just release those as standalones.
The Blood album itself, available on all streaming platforms for people who want to get a listen to it. It's a fantastic album, and just giving me that perspective has given me a stronger appreciation for those songs. So thank you, Dell. What's next? Are we going to see you around across Australia soon, supporting the Blood album or the Australian INXS Show? When can we see you next?
Well, things are starting to pick up. I'm actually, internationally, I haven't announced, but I've actually had festivals booked the last 2 years in the US, but hope more than anything. Obviously that hasn't happened, but my record label and I are working towards 2023, sort of middle of the year tour of the US.
Nice.
And working towards that, I am currently working on starting the process of, got a few individuals that are currently learning a set list. Hopefully end of this year or early next year, we'll see some Australian shows for Dellacoma, which has been a long time in the making. In support of blood. Australian INXS Show, we're still kicking. We're still we played Carnival in Port Douglas this year. We've got a fairly big show actually in Sydney in a couple of weeks. But hopefully as things start to open up a little bit more, it's been a little bit for ticketed events, you know, and festivals, it's been a little bit slower to get going. Because promoters, obviously, the last couple of years have lost a lot of money. So they're less likely to pull the trigger on stuff, but things are starting to come back there. I've got my second poetry book that's actually
we haven't mentioned the poetry books. You know, the second one coming out. So the first one was out a few years ago. How did your fans take?
Well, actually, yeah, that's been something I've always wanted to do. And I thought, you know what, I might as well just go ahead and do it. I met an artist, an incredible artist named Frank Morana during lockdowns. Just again, happened to be at the right place, right time. He's illustrating this again. It's for me, my poetry. I started with the first one, and I'm continuing the theme of getting an artist to imagine each poem in an artistic form, and we've called this Hopium.
Nice.
And it's basically it's pretty much all done. We decided to look for a publisher for this one because the first one I self-published, if we have to do it that way, we will. It's just, I feel like you don't get as much reach as you would if you get a publisher on board. So we decided to kind of hold off a little bit and see if we can get a publisher involved for that. But hopefully, whether it's on our own or through a publishing house, hopefully that'll be available soonish.
Perfect. So where can fans of yours, Del, get the first book of your poetry? Do we just visit your website?
It's actually, I got that question the other day. It's actually out of print at the moment, so I need to do it. Unfortunately, I need to do
plug for you, mate. Sorry.
That's okay. I literally got asked the other day, and I went. So unfortunately, here in Queensland, we've had some floods, and
massive floods.
Yeah, and I had about a half a box left, and like 30 copies left, and I went to go and get them, and I discovered, I was like, oh, they're all moldy. I'd managed to rescue them from one of the floods, but they ended up kind of getting stuck in a place where they obviously were still quite damp. So
yeah, that's real shame.
Too much through all of that, but yeah, the last few copies of that was one of the casualties, so I need to do another run.
Yeah, mate, you've got a lot going on. The Australian INXS Show, touring in support of blood, your second book coming out soon, hopefully the Dealer coming out very soon as well, so we can see that acting prowess of yours. What else is going on in the life of Dellacoma? Where have you got time to do it?
Well, I mean, tomorrow morning I'm going to be making school lunches and dropping the kids off at school.
Ham and cheese sandwiches, mate. That's a staple of our house.
At the moment, I mean, I'm going to start the process. Start the process of the next record, because awesome. I want. There was such a big gap between the first record and the second record, and that was because, you know, I had personal stuff and a couple band breakups, and I just decided, you know what, really liked working with Voya, who I've known for years. I've known the guitarist and producer on Blood, so it'll be the first time that I'm actually going to go back to this person. Producer-wise, in my career, I've never used the same producer twice, but we're going to start working on the next record, hopefully and again, it's just a start, but hopefully in October, I'm going to get down that way. I've got a theater show called Simon Gardner's Classic Rock Legends. It's myself, 2 female vocalists, and then a full band, and that's a proper theater show, you know, with like choreography and stuff, and we're doing Kiss, Aerosmith, you know, Van Halen, Journey, Motley Crue, all that sort of stuff. So that's a big spectacle. We're playing the Logan Entertainment Center for anyone in Brisbane.
Yeah.
In November. I'm trying to think. I think that's all for the moment. I think that's enough to keep my plate clean. I'm still trying to get in a little bit of gardening from time to time.
Well, mate, I've got, if you ever make it to WA, I've got the perfect garden for you to practice on until you return.
Amazing. Well, so, I've got a big fan out in Perth way, Cara Mears. She flew all the way to Cairns to see me a couple of years ago, because I hadn't made it out to Perth in a long time. It's been I don't know, but they helped me come over back in 2016, I think it was. That was the last time I was in Perth. Did a couple shows, but it's high time, so maybe I should put it on a 2023 to-do list.
Mate, we're going to hold you to that. Look out. We will hunt you down if you don't live to that. Dellacoma, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Such a diverse artist across a number of different, you know, genres, whether it be from theatre, TV, music. You just had an amazing career, but I feel this is only the start of, you know, something even more brilliant. So best of luck for the future, mate. On behalf of Rockhouse Matt, really appreciate your time. And for all of the fans out there, get in and listen to the latest LP Blood. It's just a fantastic listen. All right, Del.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for your time, mate. Keep smiling.